At Gore, you did a lot of technical work, very intense math and physics and chemistry, but you also had a hand in hiring people and kind of the more people, interacting with people side of things. Can you talk about the differences between those two and what qualities one might look for in someone for those jobs?
Like between the two possibilities,
yeah,
right? Like doing deep technical work all the time versus doing this part. Yeah, so just keep in mind, one of the reasons I transitioned from doing what you might describe as deep technical work to maybe doing a little bit of thought leadership or leadership work was because I took a few important problems in the industry, and actually used fairly mundane mathematical techniques to solve these problems and present them to people who understood that this was saving time and money in the company. Okay? And so in industry, well, in any place you are, you need to understand what your value proposition is, right? So what value are you adding to this organization? What are the needs, intrinsic needs that are there, and what are you bringing to bear to satisfy those needs or solving those problems? So at the time, I had 2 or 3 big wins when I first went to Gore. But the truth is, they were a combination of a little bit of programming knowledge with a little bit of numerical methods knowledge and a little bit of knowledge on how to solve fairly simple nonlinear differential equations. And then, of course, the actual solution, the actual problem I did solve was a fairly linear equation. Okay, so that's like undergraduate level mathematics, right? So what came into this win? First of all, understanding what the need is. So like, what is the problem I should be solving here? What would be valuable here? As it turns out in this problem, I was trying to streamline the understanding of a specific filtration application. And so, my then advisor helped me, to point me toward a method or a process that could characterize all the different ways you could build one of these filters very quickly. So rather than doing 2,000 experiments in the lab that might cost millions of dollars and lots of manpower, you're essentially running different scenarios through an Excel sheet that has a script behind it that's executing a differential equation solver, right? And it turns out that 80 to 90% of the physics that matters in this filtration process are captured by this mathematical model, right? This is a classic success story of applied mathematics in industry, by the way, right? You take a problem that's being solved poorly or being explored poorly, that's demonstrably expensive, okay? And you say, I can figure out a simple description of this process, and with that, the 80-20 rule is solved here. I can figure out 80% of what's important here just by solving this equation. And then once you've done that, you go to the 7 or 8 people who are on this team who are building these filters. You've got to communicate to them, like, listen, stop doing that. Like, look at this. You know how difficult that is, by the way? Somebody whose job it is to stay in a lab and continuously do experiments. You tell them to stop doing their job, right? I mean, there's so many things in getting from where you started to the end, right? A lot of that is being effective communicator with people, making what you're doing so clear to them, so obvious to them, that they're not going to say no. And then, of course, you have to make them feel secure, right? Everybody's concerned about their job in every walk of life. You never want to be that person who's coming in and killing people's work. Yeah. So you have to be the person that's saying, look at all this value to be gained, come on board, Let's broaden up the pool here, right? Jump in, because we're all going to succeed more here. So it's a mix of, I would argue all those wins were fairly simple mathematics, to be honest. An understanding of science, an understanding of engineering processes, and then really communicating that value so clearly to people who don't know anything, or maybe know little about quantitative methods. And what's more, have a commitment to doing it another way, right? You have to almost you're changing a culture, which was, by the way, a struggle for me at Gore. For a few years, that was a struggle for me. That's a culture of deep technical expertise and scientific expertise, but also an experimental culture that does a lot of Edisonian experimentation. And so to try to convince a group that you're better off using predictive models from first principles as opposed to serial experiments to solve your problem is not simple, particularly people who've been doing it for a lot of years.